She was walking home through a poorly lit park when suddenly a strong hand grabbed her. Her scream echoed through the empty streets, but no one came to help. Thus began one of the most mysterious and horrifying series of murders in American history. The name that sends chills down the spine: Ted Bundy. Attractive, charismatic, educated, he did not fit the stereotypes of a serial killer. His crimes instilled terror in women across the country. How could a person with such an appearance and manners hide in plain sight and commit such horrific crimes? How did he manage to evade justice for so long? It all began with the disappearance of several young women in different states. The police were baffled. Not a single clue, not a single witness. Only once, thanks to a lucky coincidence, did investigators stumble upon the first important piece of evidence. But who was this man who could kill so brutally and remain unnoticed? What secret was hidden behind his charming smile and intelligent appearance? Why did he choose such victims? And most importantly, how was this monster who terrorized the entire nation finally stopped? In our investigation, we will uncover how Bundy operated, the mistakes he made, and how he was ultimately caught. In early 1974, young women began disappearing in various states across the U.S. The first victim linked to this series of disappearances was Linda Ann Healy, a student from Seattle, Washington. Her room was covered in blood, but her body was missing. This sparked a wave of fear among local residents. The police could not find a single witness or clue, significantly complicating the investigation. As more and more women disappeared, it became clear. This was the work of the same criminal. Local and federal authorities began collaborating to figure out who was behind these horrific crimes. But for a long time, they remained at a dead end. Each new disappearance added a new wave of fear and uncertainty about safety. The disappearances of young women soon began to form a horrifying pattern. They were all young, slender women with long, dark hair parted in the middle. This led the police to conclude that the perpetrator chose his victims according to a specific pattern. Attempts to build a psychological profile of the killer began. This method, though new at the time, became an important tool in the investigation. Psychologists suggested that the perpetrator might have self-esteem issues and possibly harbored hatred towards women of a certain type. This hypothesis helped narrow the circle of suspects, but there were still no specific names. Combining data from different states revealed similar methods of the criminal's actions. It was these similar characteristics of the victims that allowed the formation of the first suspicions. In the summer of 1974, several women reported a man who introduced himself as Ted and asked for help with a supposedly broken car. One of these women, Janice Ott, agreed to help and disappeared without a trace. Witness testimonies allowed for the creation of a composite sketch, which was distributed to all police departments. This first image of the criminal gave the police at least some lead, but capturing him remained an extremely difficult task. The sketch began to appear in news reports and on posters in public places, generating wide public interest and concern. Police hoped that someone would recognize the man and provide additional information. Thanks to the distribution of the composite sketch, in August 1975, police stopped a suspicious Volkswagen driven by Ted Bundy. A search of the car revealed a mask, handcuffs, and other items indicating his involvement in the abductions. Bundy was arrested but managed to escape from custody in June 1977. This was his first escape, and unfortunately, he continued his crimes, killing even more young women. His ability to escape shocked the police and forced them to reconsider their methods of holding such dangerous criminals. Bundy used his charm and knowledge of the law to deceive guards and find himself free once more. Bundy's escape abilities soon manifested again. In December 1977, he escaped from jail once more. This time he headed to Florida, where he committed his most brutal series of murders. In January 1978, he broke into the Chi Omega sorority house in Tallahassee, killing 2 women and injuring several others. These attacks drew nationwide attention and caused a public outcry. The police intensified their efforts to capture him. Bundy realized his time was limited and acted more boldly and recklessly, which ultimately worked against him. Each new crime only brought him closer to his end, making him more vulnerable to the law. After the series of attacks in Florida, Bundy was finally caught in February 1978. He tried to hide but was arrested by police in Pensacola. His capture became a sensation, with all media attention focused on his case. A search of his car revealed physical evidence linking him to the crimes. A lengthy trial began, which captivated the entire country. The public and press followed every step of the investigation and trial, making Bundy's case one of the most talked about in U.S. history. The trial was full of emotions and dramatic moments. The trial itself became the culmination of all police and investigators' efforts. Ted Bundy's trial became one of the most high-profile trials in U.S. history. Bundy decided to defend himself, adding to the drama. Witness testimonies, physical evidence, and the prosecution's confidence led to his conviction in July 1979. He was found guilty of murdering 2 women from Chi Omega and sentenced to death. This decision elicited mixed feelings from the public, but most considered it fair. The trial was full of emotional moments, including dramatic testimonies from survivors and the families of the victims. Bundy attempted to use his legal knowledge to manipulate the trial, but to no avail. Despite his conviction, Bundy continued to deny his guilt. But a few days before his execution in January 1989, he finally confessed to more than 30 murders. This confession not only confirmed his guilt, but also helped close many unresolved missing persons cases. His revelations shocked many but also brought some relief to the victims' families, who finally learned the truth. Bundy's confessions allowed the police and investigators to better understand his methodology and motives, which became crucial in preventing similar crimes in the future. These confessions also allowed researchers to delve deeper into the psychology of serial killers. The final chapter in Bundy's case was his execution. Ted Bundy was executed in the electric chair on January 24, 1989. This event sparked widespread public reaction. Many people gathered outside the prison to mark the occasion. Some saw it as an act of justice, while others viewed it as an attempt to close one of the darkest chapters in criminology history. Bundy left behind many questions that continue to intrigue researchers and psychologists. His execution became a symbolic end to one of the most terrifying eras in American criminology history. Bundy's death sparked numerous discussions about the nature of evil and how society should respond to such criminals. Despite Bundy's death, the memory of his victims lives on. Each of Ted Bundy's victims had their unique story, dreams, and plans for the future. These women were not merely random targets of his brutality. They had families, friends, studies, and jobs. For example, Janice Ott was a social worker who sought to help the needy. Linda Healy was a talented musician and student. The stories of their lives help to understand the scale of the tragedy and the depth of the pain caused by their loss. Knowing these stories also emphasizes the importance of remembering the victims, not just their killer. Some women managed to survive Bundy's attacks, and their testimonies proved invaluable to the investigation. Carol Durant, one such survivor, managed to escape from Bundy in November 1974. Her testimony became key in the case against him. Durant described how Bundy posed as a police officer and tried to abduct her. Her bravery and determination allowed investigators to gather important evidence and create a more accurate portrait of the criminal. The testimonies of survivors became an essential part of the trial and helped achieve justice. Studying the methods used by Bundy provided a deeper understanding of his criminal activity. Bundy used cunning methods to abduct his victims. He often posed as disabled, using crutches or a cast to evoke sympathy and trust. Women who agreed to help did not suspect they were in the hands of a ruthless killer. This methodology allowed him to remain unnoticed for a long time. He also meticulously planned his crimes, choosing remote and sparsely populated places for attacks. His knowledge of law and psychology helped him manipulate those around him and avoid suspicion. Bundy was a master of disguise and deception, making him particularly dangerous. The motives behind Bundy's brutal crimes have always intrigued researchers. Some psychologists suggested that his actions were the result of deeply rooted personal issues and mental disorders. Others believed he harbored hatred towards women, possibly due to failed relationships in the past. In his rare confessions, Bundy spoke of an irresistible internal urge to kill. His actions were a combination of narcissism, manipulation, and cruelty. Understanding Bundy's motives is crucial for preventing similar crimes in the future and aiding in the rehabilitation of people with similar tendencies. During the investigation and trials, community support played a crucial role. Many people participated in rallies, expressing their solidarity and demanding justice. The victims' families received moral and financial support from various organizations. This also drew attention to issues of violence and the need for support systems for victims. The Bundy case became a catalyst for creating new programs and initiatives aimed at preventing violence and helping victims. Community support was an important factor in the recovery process after the tragedy. The investigation of Bundy's case required coordination between various law enforcement agencies. Federal and local law enforcement agencies worked together to collect and analyze data on Bundy's crimes. This coordination allowed for the rapid exchange of information and response to new evidence. It's important to note that interstate cooperation was innovative at the time and played a crucial role in capturing the criminal. This approach became a model for subsequent investigations of serial murders and other major crimes. However, not all suspects were involved in the crimes. During the Bundy investigation, police arrested several false suspects, complicating the process of capturing the real criminal. Some of the arrested fit the description provided by witnesses, but were ultimately innocent. These mistakes caused criticism towards the police and increased public pressure on law enforcement agencies. However, each arrest also brought new lessons and allowed investigators to refine their approach to finding the real killer. The experience with false suspects highlighted the importance of thoroughly checking evidence and testimonies before making accusations. The media and public opinion played a significant role during the investigation and trials. The media played a major role in the Ted Bundy case, both positively and negatively. On one hand, extensive news coverage helped draw attention to the crimes and hasten their investigation. On the other hand, the media sometimes fueled panic and published unverified information, complicating police work. Public opinion also pressured investigators and the court, demanding swift resolution and justice. This interaction between media and law enforcement became an important aspect in the development of the case and led to a new understanding of journalism's role in investigations. The experience gained during the Bundy investigation significantly influenced future serial murder investigation methods. The Ted Bundy case greatly influenced future serial murder investigation methods. The experience gained in working on this case helped improve criminal profiling techniques and evidence collection methods. The police began to use psychological analysis and interstate cooperation more actively in complex cases. This case also highlighted the importance of training and educating police officers in working with serial killers. The methods used in Bundy's capture became part of training programs for law enforcement across the country, improving their readiness to work with such criminals. Special attention was also drawn to Bundy's personal relationships with his family. Ted Bundy's personality and his relationships with his family raised many questions among investigators and psychologists. Bundy grew up in a family where he was considered the son of his grandparents, and his mother played the role of his older sister. This complex family situation may have affected his psyche. As he grew older, Bundy maintained relationships with relatives, but his double life remained hidden. Some family members refused to believe in his guilt until the very end. Understanding these relationships helped specialists delve deeper into the reasons and motives behind his behavior. One cannot overlook Bundy's successful academic and professional career before his criminal activities began. Before his crimes, Ted Bundy was a promising student. He attended the University of Washington, studying psychology, and later enrolled in law school. His intellectual abilities and charm made him popular among students and professors. Bundy also worked on several political campaigns, demonstrating leadership qualities and the ability to persuade. This aspect of his life added even more contradictions to his image, showing how someone with such potential could become a ruthless killer. An interesting aspect of Bundy's criminal activity was the periods of inactivity when he ceased his attacks. These periods could last from several months to a year. Researchers suggested that during this time, he tried to lead a normal life, maintaining relationships and engaging in studies. These breaks made him even more elusive as the police lost his trail. Understanding the reasons for these periods of inactivity helps better study the psychology of serial killers and their behavior.
Psychological studies of Ted Bundy's personality continue to this day. Specialists analyze his behavior, motives, and internal conflicts, trying to find an explanation for his brutality. Some researchers believe Bundy suffered from psychopathy, characterized by a lack of empathy and guilt. Others suggest he had deeply rooted psychological traumas that led to his crimes. These studies help better understand the nature of serial killers and develop methods for their detection and rehabilitation.
The Ted Bundy case became one of the first instances where the profiling method was actively used. Psychologists and criminologists worked together to create a psychological portrait of the criminal, analyzing his behavior and voice of victims.
This method proved effective and later widely used in serial murder investigations. Profiling allowed investigators to of criminals and predict their future actions, significantly increasing the chances of capturing them.
The Ted Bundy case left a deep mark on criminology and society. His crimes and the subsequent trial showed the importance of interstate cooperation and the use of psychological profiling in investigations. Despite his charm and intelligence, Bundy could not escape justice, and his execution in 1989 marked the end of this gruesome story. However, even after his death, Bundy remains a symbol of the hidden threat and cruelty that can lurk behind an attractive appearance. His case reminds us of the need to be vigilant and cautious, as well as the importance of supporting violence victims.